To me, one death from gun violence is a lot. It's too much. It's too many. When we think about the epidemic of gun violence in this country, we kind of get lost in geography, urban versus rural, race, age. There's nothing unique or specific about black people or black culture that predisposes us to gun violence. It's not a racial issue. However, it's an issue that's racialized.
Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are, whichever one applies to you. I am Christopher Abernathy, and I'm a prevention specialist at ASAP, and I have a special guest with me today. I'm going to let him go ahead and introduce himself.
Good afternoon. I'm Kameron Akeru, and I have the pleasure of working with ASAP on Barbers Against Bullets. I am a founder of Achievement America, an educational consulting company, and also have a nonprofit organization called the Jedi Center, or the Center for Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion.
Cool. So y'all heard him. We're back at it with the Barbers Against Bullets podcast, and what we're going to be talking about mostly, I guess, is just, the culture of what's going on in America. I know whenever we were starting off the Barbers Against Bullets program in the first place, our major concern was that not only were we seeing, even our celebrities and, other figures in our culture dying from gun violence, but we were also seeing our cousins, our friends, the people in our, our neighborhoods every day, they were dying from gun violence. So we started trying to look up what the statistics were as far as gun violence in this area. And we found one thing that was really surprising us. We found that there were 46 deaths that can be attributed to gun violence in this area. So that was 20 in Calhoun County and 26 in Talladega County. And that just kind of shocked us because we tried to put that into perspective. And if you put it into perspective, that's almost a death for every week of the year of 2022. Those statistics belong to that year. And so I was just wondering, is that a lot for a rural area like this, or like how does that register to you as far as like how widespread that is in this area?
Yeah, no, that's a great question and an important point. To me, one death from gun violence is a lot. It's too much. It's too many, right? And sometimes when we think about the problem of the epidemic of gun violence in this country, we kind of get lost in geography, urban versus rural, other demographics, race, age, gender, class. You can slice the data any way you want, but the reality and the core fundamental issue is that we have a nationwide problem in this country in particular with gun violence. There are more guns in this country than people, and in the black community in particular, we have a disproportionately high rate, given our size of our population, a disproportionately high rate of gun violence. And so we have to really take a hard look at that and begin to ask ourselves why that is. There's nothing unique or specific about black people or black culture that predisposes us to gun violence. It's not a racial issue. However, it's an issue that's racialized because the rates of structural violence, right? So there's interpersonal violence. You and I getting into an altercation, that would be interpersonal violence. But there's also structural violence, poverty, lack of access to high quality education, right? Unemployment or underemployment, right? These are the things that contribute to creating environments in which you're going to have higher rates of crime and higher rates of violence. That's been shown, right? Anytime you have concentrated poverty or yawning or growing inequality, which is what's been happening in this country for past several decades at least, you're going to have higher rates of crime. So this is not a mystery. So despite those structural variables, though, we still have to ask ourselves, what kind of community, what kind of society we want to live in. And unfortunately, there is a huge cultural problem, a lack of awareness, a lack of consciousness in this country surrounding guns. President Obama famously said that Americans cling to guns and religion. And that's true, right? And so I think we have to begin to really look in the mirror. And one of the things that I hope this program will do is force us to have an honest and candid conversation with ourselves and with each other about the future of our children, the future of our country, what kind of culture we want to live in. Because as it stands today, we don't have a civilization.
Yeah.
Because to be civilized, you have to have peace. You have to have governance. You have to have democracy. You have to have law and order, all these kinds of things. But if you have a culture where children are killed in school at the rate that they are, where you have mass shootings at the rate that they happen, you can't honestly define yourself as a civilized society. So, the culture of violence in this country is one that has to be addressed, and we really have to get down to the root causes of it. And so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to get involved and contribute what I could to Barbers Against Bullets.
Solid points, Mayor. Solid points made there. All solid points. So, yeah, with Barbers Against Bullets, that's ultimately our main objective, to try to cut down on gun violence in our area. And everybody always seems to have different thoughts about where it is that we should start. I'll go ahead and be the first person. Sometimes I feel like I believe the image that some of our young people see of people that look like them, in the media and stuff like that, I feel like that could be changed, because that would probably help how we view ourselves and how desensitized to violence, and not seeing people that look like us as a friend or as family, as that fits into the picture. So what's one of your starting points, I would ask, to where we could fix this?
Well, it goes to what you said, and one of the things that I hope will come out of this initiative is creating a heightened level of awareness and ultimately raising the consciousness of people in our community, so that we really begin to see ourselves in a new way. Mm-hmm. We need to shift the paradigm, and we also have to understand and develop a level of structural competency around what are the structural and systemic issues that we're truly confronting. It's not simply a problem that can be solved through locking people up, right? That's been done, right? We have a problem in this country. We incarcerate more people than any other country in the world, comparatively, right? And so we can't mass incarcerate our way out of this problem. We have to get to its root causes, and at the individual level, and ultimately at the collective level, it's a problem of conscience, right? We're here in Alabama, which played a really fundamental role in the civil rights movement. And in 1967, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King talked about the triple evils of militarism, materialism, and racism, right? And he talked about, in the Poor People's Campaign, the need to end poverty. Well, those same issues are still relevant today, and in fact, even more so, right? And so one of the things that we have to understand is we can't continue to allow ourselves to be pawns in the sort of political and economic machinations of people who profit from gun violence.
Most definitely.
People who, Dr. King was a big critic of the military-industrial complex. And when you look at the relationship between those companies and corporations that benefit directly from gun sales, it's no different than, the prison industrial complex. There are people, private companies, who benefit from essentially the expansion of gun sales. And so every time there's a mass shooting, what happens? Gun sales go up. Mm-hmm. And if we continue to allow ourselves to be complicit in those economies, then we're essentially allowing people to profit from the death of our loved ones. And so we have a decision to make fundamentally.
Gotcha.
We have to decide, again, if we're going to become aware and then walk and live in that awareness, so that we don't become the victim of broader structural inequality of the military or the prison industrial complex, right? Yeah. We have to have that level of awareness so that we can make better decisions about how we govern ourselves, how we relate to one another, how we resolve conflicts, right? Because conflicts are going to emerge. That's inevitable, right? But we have to be smarter. And fundamentally, we have to begin to love ourselves and love each other, right? Because we can either have a community that is really oriented around an ethic of love, or a community that is moving increasingly towards self-destruction. And so I think that enough of us can come together and solve this problem and raise the awareness, raise the consciousness. I know that we can do better because our children deserve to inherit a better society than what we have now. Yeah. And hopefully we can make that happen.
Yeah. Those are really, really solid points. I appreciate you putting all of that into perspective, and we'll talk more on that later because we have some more things that we have to cover. But thank you for talking with me today.
Thanks for having me, CJ.
Yes, sir.